Commander Jake Morrison stood in the huge meeting hall of the Galactic Council. His Navy uniform was clean and neat, even after the long trip from Earth. Next to him stood Ambassador Claire Sullivan. She looked calm on the outside, but her hands shook a little as she held her tablet. The council hall was enormous. It had a crystal dome ceiling that seemed to touch the sky. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in rows above them. These aliens were here to judge humanity. The Zenthari High Magistrate was a tall creature covered in shiny scales. He raised 3 of his forearms to make everyone quiet. "Humans of Earth," the magistrate's voice boomed through translation devices. "We have looked at your request to join the Galactic Council. We have decided that your species is too dangerous. You are too violent and too wild to be part of our civilized galaxy." Claire stepped forward. Her voice was steady and strong. "Magistrate, we showed you our science and our culture. We showed you that we can live in peace. We followed every rule you gave us." A reptile-like council member from the Draxan Empire made a hissing sound. "Your people have fought wars against each other for thousands of years. Your planet's history is full of violence and blood. We have watched you fight each other. You cannot even unite your own world." Jake felt his jaw tighten with anger, but he stayed quiet. He had served in peacekeeping missions across Earth. He knew humanity had problems, but he also knew they had great strength and courage. The magistrate continued speaking. "We are also putting sanctions on Earth. Your planet will be isolated. No trade with Council worlds, no technology sharing, no contact with any Council species. You will stay alone until you prove you are worthy." If that day ever comes, the vote began. 47 lights appeared on a holographic screen. 45 lights turned red, meaning rejection. Only 2 lights turned blue. The small Kelran and Thalix groups had voted to give humans a chance. Then another motion came from the Vryn Collective. These aliens were known for their trading ships and factories. "We propose another rule. Any council member who trades with Earth will be punished. They will face economic sanctions and maybe even be kicked out of the council." This vote passed with everyone agreeing. Only the Kelran and Thalix didn't vote at all. Claire's face showed no emotion as she gathered her papers. "Then we have nothing more to talk about, Magistrate. Earth came here looking for friendship, but we will not beg you for it." As they walked down the long hallway to their shuttle, Jake finally spoke. "What happens now?" "Now we go home," Claire said quietly. "We tell them that humanity stands alone." Neither the humans nor the Galactic Council knew something important. The Korthak swarm had been listening to everything. Far away in the dark spaces between galaxies, an ancient intelligence woke up. Its scouts had been watching the council meeting with great interest. The swarm had been waiting for thousands of years for the right moment and the right weakness to attack. The split in the galaxy's unity was perfect. A powerful species had been isolated and rejected. This gave the Korthaks an opportunity they had not seen in 3,000 years. They began to move toward the galaxy, preparing for their harvest. 6 months passed after the Council's rejection. Captain Alan Brooks was in command of the Earth Defense Station Olympus. This was a massive platform floating at the edge of the solar system. The station was built to warn Earth of any danger from space. Most of his crew thought it was useless. They believed no threat would ever come. Lieutenant Sophie Grant sat at the sensor station. She was running normal scans of deep space. Her shift had been boring until suddenly the sensors began making loud warning sounds. "Captain, I'm seeing huge spatial distortions at the edge of the Oort cloud. Multiple contacts. Thousands of them." Alan rushed to her station in seconds. "What kind of ships?" "Unknown. They're not using any propulsion system we know about. Not ours and not any council system we've recorded." "Captain, they're moving very fast and coming straight toward us." Within minutes, the command center was on full alert. Video feeds from deep space probes started coming in. What they showed made Alan's blood turn cold with fear. The Korthak swarm looked like a living nightmare. The ships, if you could call them ships, moved through space like schools of hunting fish. Each vessel was about the size of a battleship. They were covered in armor that looked like insect shells and seemed to swallow light. They moved together perfectly, thousands of them acting as one creature. "Connect me to Earth Command," Alan ordered. "Tell them we have a big problem." On Earth, General Marcus Webb got the message at the Global Defense Headquarters. This building was buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. He watched the video footage twice before he activated the emergency protocols. These were plans that humanity hoped they would never need to use. "This is not a drill. he announced to all the military chiefs on hologram screens. "We have an unknown enemy force entering our solar system. Their numbers are in the thousands and growing. All defense forces must get ready for battle now." Dr. Lisa Chen was Earth's top scientist who studied alien life. She looked at the images with growing fear. "General, these creatures are not in any council database. They're completely unknown to us. Are they natural or machines?" Marcus asked, "Both and neither. They're biological and technological at the same time. They evolved or were created for war. General, if they want to fight, our normal weapons might not be enough." Marcus looked at Earth's military inventory on his screen. After the Council rejected them, humanity had stopped trying to join galactic politics. But they had not stopped preparing for the future. Being isolated forced Earth to rely on itself. This created a renaissance in military technology and new inventions. "Send out the fleet. Everything we have. And get me Ambassador Sullivan. We need to warn the Council." Claire was already working on it. From Earth's embassy station outside Council space, she sent a message on all emergency channels. "Galactic Council, this is Ambassador Claire Sullivan of Earth. An unknown enemy force has entered our system. We count more than 10,000 vessels. We are going to fight them, but we need help right away. This threat might not stop with humanity." The response came an hour later from the Zenthari magistrate. His tone was dismissive and cold. "Earth's quarantine stays in place. We will not get involved in your conflicts. If this is a trick to make us feel sorry for you, it will not work." Another voice spoke up. It belonged to Counselor Dravik of the Vrin Collective. "Humanity probably caused this attack because of their aggressive nature. Let them face the results of their actions." Claire's response was like ice. "Then we will handle this ourselves. But when this threat comes for you, and it will come, remember that Earth tried to warn you." Back at the front line, Captain Alan Brooks watched as the Earth Defense Fleet moved into battle formation. 200 ships formed up in space. This was the largest military force humanity had ever put together in space. It included battleships, destroyers, fighters, and support vessels. Every ship was crewed by volunteers who knew they might not come home. Commander Jake Morrison now led a strike wing of advanced fighters. He opened a communication channel to his squadron. "Listen up, everyone. We don't know what these things are or what they want. But they came into our home and we're going to make them sorry. Stay close to each other. Watch your wingman's back and show them what humans can do." The Korthak swarm met them near the orbit of Neptune. The battle was unlike anything humanity had prepared for. The swarm ships moved like living things, twisting and turning with ease. When missiles or bullets hit them, their armor healed itself within seconds. They shot back with biological plasma weapons that melted through ship hulls like hot knives through butter. Within the first hour, humanity lost 30 ships. Thousands of people died in those first minutes of combat. But humans are good at learning quickly from their mistakes. Jake noticed something important. The swarm ships were strong individually, but they worked together as a group. "All wings, listen up. Focus your fire. Don't spread out your attacks. Hit one target with everything you have." The new tactic worked better. When they hit a single swarm ship with overwhelming firepower before it could heal, it exploded from the inside. Its biological systems failed completely. The kill ratio started to improve. Humanity was learning how to fight back. On the Olympus station, Lieutenant Sophie Grant coordinated the defense with calm efficiency. Redirect orbital weapons platforms 7 through 12. Create a crossfire pattern. Make them fly through overlapping fields of fire. The battle went on for 18 brutal hours. Nobody slept. Nobody rested. They just fought and fought until their hands were numb and their eyes burned with exhaustion. When the swarm finally pulled back, humanity had lost 87 ships and over 4,000 people. But they had destroyed nearly 300 swarm vessels. As the enemy retreated beyond Neptune's orbit, General Marcus Webb spoke to his tired forces. "They're regrouping. We hurt them badly, but this is just the beginning. They'll come back and they'll be smarter next time. We need to be ready." Marcus didn't know that the Korthak swarm had already sent smaller scout groups toward the nearest council worlds. Earth had been a test, a way to see how strong the galaxy's defenders were. Now the swarm knew the truth. The galaxy was weak and ready for harvesting. The Zenthari homeworld of Zenthara Prime had stood for 12,000 years. It was beautiful, with crystal cities that sparkled under twin suns. The Zenthari people had never known war in living memory. They were peaceful and proud of their civilization. That all changed when the Korthak swarm arrived at their doorstep. High Magistrate Valor got the first emergency calls with shock and disbelief. The outer colony of Zenthera 6 had gone completely silent. Its last message showed the same biological nightmares that had attacked Earth. "This cannot be happening," Valor said to his military commander, General Thross. "Our defense network is perfect. We have the most advanced fleet in the Council." "We had the most advanced fleet," Thross corrected him with a grim face. "Our ships were designed for patrols and peacekeeping, not real warfare against an enemy like this. We haven't fought a real war in 3,000 years. Our people don't even remember what war looks like." The Zenthari defense fleet was beautiful to look at. 500 ships, each one looking like a work of art as much as a weapon, moved in perfect formation toward the swarm. Their captains were confident. They had never lost a battle because they had never fought one. They lasted 40 minutes before their fleet was broken. The swarm had learned from fighting humans. They now moved in smaller, more aggressive groups. They targeted power systems and life support first. They crippled ships instead of destroying them quickly, letting crews freeze or suffocate in space. Terror spread through the Zenthari fleet faster than the swarm ships. By the time the swarm reached Zenthara Prime, 1/3 of the defense fleet was gone. The rest was running away in panic. Similar scenes happened across Council space. The Draxan Empire had been quick to say humans were too violent. But now they found their own warrior traditions had grown soft over thousands of years of peace. They had ceremonies and honor codes but no real combat experience. The Vryn Collective's merchant ships tried to fight back. But you cannot bargain with an enemy that just wants to consume you. Within 2 weeks of the swarm's expansion, 17 Council worlds had been attacked. 8 worlds had fallen completely. Their populations were consumed, turned into biomass to feed the swarm's growth. Billions died screaming. Ambassador Claire Sullivan watched the Council's emergency meeting from Earth's monitoring station. The once proud assembly was in complete chaos. Delegates shouted at each other. Accusations flew back and forth. Nobody had solutions, only blame. "This is humanity's fault," Councillor Dravik shouted loudly. "They brought this plague upon us." A Kelrun delegate stood up. He was one of the few who had voted to accept humans. The swarm was coming no matter what. At least Earth fought back. Where was our courage? We insulted them for having strong militaries, and now we wish we had warriors too. The Thalix ambassador was an old being with see-through skin. She spoke softly, but everyone listened. "I propose we contact Earth. We should ask for their help." The council chamber fell completely silent. You could hear people breathing. Magistrate Velor's scales had lost their shine. He looked tired and afraid. "You want us to beg for help from those we rejected and insulted?" "I want us to survive," the Thalix ambassador replied. "Pride is something we cannot afford anymore." The vote was called. This time 31 lights turned blue for yes. 15 turned red for no. 1 didn't vote at all. The council was asking Earth for help. The message reached Earth 6 hours later. General Marcus Webb read it out loud to his command staff. The Galactic Council formally asks for military help from Earth to fight the Korthak swarm. They say their previous judgment was wrong. They want immediate technology exchange and alliance. Commander Jake Morrison was back on Earth getting his fighter repaired. He shook his head in disbelief. "They rejected us. They sanctioned us. They left us to die alone. Now they want our help?" Captain Alan Brooks had new scars on his face from the battle at Neptune. He leaned back in his chair. What they want doesn't matter. The real question is, what do we do? Everyone looked at President Helen Carter. She was Earth's elected leader, who had watched the council humiliate her planet 6 months ago. She stood at the window looking up at the stars. "The council taught us who they really are," Helen said slowly. "They showed us their character when they thought we were weak. But now we get to choose who we are." She turned to face the room. "Every part of me wants to say no, to watch them suffer for what they did to us. But that's what they would do. That's exactly what they did to us." Dr. Lisa Chen spoke carefully. "Madam President, if the council falls, the swarm will be unstoppable. They're getting stronger with each world they eat. Even if we defend our solar system, eventually they'll have enough numbers to crush us too." "I know," Helen said. "That's why we're going to help them. Not because they deserve it, but because it's right. That's what humans do. We help others even when it costs us. Especially then," she turned to General Marcus, "prepare our forces. But we do this on our terms. We command our own troops. We keep our technology secret. And when this is over, the Council owes us respect, not just thanks. The message Earth sent back was short and simple. Earth accepts. We're coming. Hold on. The Earth fleet came out of hyperspace at the edge of Xanthera Prime's system, like a storm made of metal and fire. 300 ships appeared all at once. Every combat-ready vessel humanity could gather was there, along with supply ships, medical frigates, and mobile repair stations. But the numbers were not what shocked the Xanthari defenders who watched. It was what those ships looked like and how they moved. Council ships were smooth and beautiful, designed as much for elegance as for function. Earth ships were different. They were angular and brutal-looking, covered in thick armor plating and covered with weapons. They looked like they were built for only one purpose: war. Commander Jake Morrison led the first attack wave in a new type of fighter called the Valkyrie. These were designed specifically to fight the swarm. All wings, this is Morrison. We're hunting in packs just like we practiced at Neptune. Target the swarm coordination nodes first. Remember, these things are tough, but they can be killed. The swarm had already started attacking Xanthera Prime's defenses. Thousands of biological ships swarmed around the planet like angry bees. They were slowly destroying what was left of the Xanthari fleet. Then humanity crashed into them like a hammer. Captain Alan Brooks commanded the EDS Harbinger, Earth's newest and biggest battleship. The ship was built during the months when Earth was isolated. All weapons, get ready to fire. Let's get their attention. The Harbinger's main cannons used new plasma fusion technology that Earth scientists had invented. They tore through swarm ships like they were made of paper. Council weapons were designed to be precise and efficient. Human weapons were designed for one thing: overwhelming destruction. The swarm turned to face this new threat. Thousands of vessels changed direction and came straight at the human fleet. On the surface of Xanthera Prime, Magistrate Velor watched in amazement. The Earth forces didn't run away from the swarm's charge. They accelerated straight toward it. They're insane, General Thross whispered in shock. Nobody charges at the swarm head-on. Lieutenant Sophie Grant was now serving as tactical coordinator for the whole fleet. She had a different view. The swarm expects everyone to run. We're not going to run. The two forces hit each other in the space between Xanthera's moons. What followed was not a normal space battle. It was a brutal brawl with no rules. Human ships used tactics the Council had never imagined. They rammed swarm vessels when they ran out of ammunition, damaged ships that should have retreated instead, locked onto swarm creatures and exploded their reactors on purpose, taking dozens of enemy ships with them in massive explosions. Fighter pilots who lost their weapons used their ships as missiles, crashing into swarm ships at full speed. Jake Morrison's squadron showed the human way of fighting. When a swarm ship grabbed onto his wing, he didn't try to shake it off by dodging. Instead, he flew straight into a field of floating debris. He used the wreckage of destroyed Council ships as scrapers to tear the creature off his hull. "This is crazy," his wingman, Lieutenant Danny Hayes, shouted over the radio. "Crazy works," Jake replied. He fired his cannons point blank into the soft underbelly of a swarm ship, blowing it apart. These things have never fought an enemy that refuses to die. But humanity wasn't just bringing wild aggression to the fight. They brought intelligence and adaptability too. Dr. Lisa Chen had discovered something very important about the swarm. The ships communicated through something called biological quantum entanglement. It was like telepathy, but based on quantum physics. If you disrupted that signal, individual ships became confused. They moved slower and became vulnerable. Earth's engineers built special quantum scrambler missiles. Every human ship carried them in their weapons bays. "Deploy scrambler missiles," Alan Brooks ordered. "Let's see how they fight when they can't talk to each other." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Swarm ships started moving in confused patterns. Their perfect coordination broke down completely. Individual creatures cut off from the group mind became predictable, and predictable enemies could be killed efficiently. The battle lasted 16 hours of nonstop combat. Nobody ate. Nobody slept. They just fought until they couldn't feel their hands anymore. When it finally ended, the swarm had been driven away from Xanthera Prime's system completely. Over 4,000 swarm ships floated dead in space. Humanity had lost 48 vessels and thousands of brave people. The cost was terrible, but the message was clear. Earth could fight the swarm and win. Magistrate Velor invited Commander Morrison and Ambassador Claire Sullivan to the planet's surface for an official meeting. The grand hall that was once used for celebrations now looked like a military command center. It was filled with exhausted soldiers from many different species. "Commander Morrison, Ambassador Sullivan," Valor said. His voice was heavy with emotion. "The Xanthari people owe you everything. You came when we needed you most, even after how badly we treated you." Claire's response was measured and careful. "We didn't come for your gratitude, Magistrate. We came because it was necessary. The swarm threatens all intelligent life. This isn't about politics anymore. This is about survival. Still, I must ask," Valor continued. "How did you do it? How did you defeat what our combined fleets could not? You are one world. We are 47 civilizations." Jake Morrison stepped forward. He was still wearing his flight suit, covered in sweat and exhaustion. "Want to know our secret, Magistrate? We're not better than you. We're not smarter or more technologically advanced, but we've spent our entire history fighting. Fighting each other, fighting our environment, fighting diseases, fighting to survive on a planet that tried to kill us in 100 different ways." He pointed to the holographic display showing the recent battle. "You've had peace for thousands of years. That's beautiful. That's something to be proud of. But it also made you soft. Made you forget that sometimes peace has to be defended with strength." He looked around the room at the alien faces. "We lost a lot of good people today. Every single person who died knew they might not make it back. They came anyway. Not because they hated you for rejecting us. They came because it was the right thing to do. Because that's what humans do. We protect others even when those others don't deserve it." A Draxan general approached slowly. He was one of those who had voted against Earth. "I called your species violent and aggressive. I said you were unworthy. I was wrong. You are warriors, and I understand now that there is a big difference." "What difference?" Jake asked. "Warriors know when to fight and what to fight for," the general said quietly. "Violent people fight because they know nothing else. You fight to protect others, even those who wronged you. That takes more than strength. It takes honor and character." Over the next weeks, the same pattern repeated across Council space. Wherever the swarm attacked, Earth forces came to help. Sometimes they won easily. Sometimes the price was terrible and many died, but they always came. They never abandoned anyone. The Battle of the Vryn homeworld cost Earth 73 ships and thousands of lives, but it saved 3 billion people. The defense of the Kelran colonies was won with fewer casualties because the Kelran people fought bravely on the ground, buying time for humanity's fleet to arrive and help. With each battle, humanity shared what they knew. They taught Council species their tactics, their technology, and their hard-won lessons written in blood. Council species started adapting and learning to fight as humans fought, fiercely, smartly, and never giving up. But the swarm was learning too. It grew larger and smarter with each battle. Every world it consumed added to its biomass, its intelligence, and its capabilities. The swarm was evolving faster than anyone expected. General Marcus Webb sat in his office on Earth, looking at strategic maps that covered the entire galaxy. He had been awake for 30 hours straight, coordinating battles across dozens of star systems. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he kept drinking it anyway. "We're winning battles but losing the war," he said to his staff. "For every world we save, the swarm takes 2 more. At this rate, we'll run out of ships before they run out of numbers. We need to find where they're coming from and cut off the source." Dr. Lisa Chen had been working in her laboratory for weeks, barely sleeping. She studied captured swarm tissue under every type of scanner humanity had. Finally, she found something important. "General, I need to show you something," Lisa said as she entered his office. She looked exhausted but excited. "The swarm isn't invading from outside the galaxy. They've been here all along, sleeping and waiting. Something woke them up." "What do you mean they've been here?" Marcus asked. Lisa pulled up data on the screen. "Look at the genetic markers in the swarm tissue. They match ancient biological samples in the Council archives, samples that are 3,000 years old. The swarm was here before and someone stopped them. How did they stop them? I don't know the details yet, but I know who might have answers." Lisa pointed to star charts. "The Thalics are the oldest species in the Council. They were around during the Ancient War. If anyone knows the truth about the swarm, it's them." The Thalics homeworld was at the edge of Council space. Ancient warning beacons surrounded the system, telling ships to stay away unless invited. Ambassador Claire Sullivan had never been allowed to visit before. Nobody had. The Thalics kept to themselves and rarely shared their deepest secrets. But desperate times changed everything. Claire and Dr. Lisa Chen were brought deep into the Thalix archives. These were carved into a mountain that was older than most civilizations in the galaxy. Elder Saris, who was nearly 400 years old, guided them through corridors lined with crystal data storage that glowed with soft light. "You want to know about the Korthax," Saris said. Her translucent skin pulsed with colors that might have been sadness. "I hoped this knowledge would die with my generation. I hoped the galaxy would never need to remember. We need to know how they were defeated last time," Lisa said urgently. "We need to know how to end this permanently." Saris led them to a special chamber where ancient holographic projectors still worked. The recording showed the galaxy 3,000 years in the past. It was on fire with war. The Korthax swarm had been even larger back then, consuming entire sectors of space. Hundreds of civilizations had been wiped out. The ancient council tried everything, Saris explained as they watched the horrible images. Weapons, biological attacks, even devices that destroyed whole planets. Nothing worked. The swarm just adapted to everything and grew stronger with each world it ate. Then how was it stopped? Claire asked desperately. It wasn't stopped. Not really. Saris activated another recording. This one was harder to watch. A species called the Viridian made the ultimate sacrifice. They were masters of quantum technology, far beyond anything we have today. They built a weapon, a quantum cage that would seal the swarm away from normal space. But the weapon needed an impossible amount of power to work. The hologram showed thousands of Viridian ships flying directly into the heart of the swarm. They used their own life energy. Their entire civilization's energy was converted to power the weapon. Every single Viridian died, billions of them. But they saved the galaxy. Lisa studied the technical information displayed in the hologram. Her scientific mind was racing through calculations. Could we build this weapon again? Perhaps you could, Saris said slowly. But you would need the same power source. The original weapon required billions of lives willingly sacrificed. Their life energy converted to quantum power. No, Claire said firmly. Absolutely not. We find another way. There has to be another way. As they studied the ancient data for hours, a terrible realization slowly emerged. The quantum cage hadn't sealed the swarm in a pocket dimension like everyone thought. It had sealed them at the galactic core, using the gravity of the supermassive black hole as a prison. The black hole's immense gravity kept them trapped in a quantum field, and something had weakened that prison over time. Back on Earth, General Marcus Webb looked at their findings with growing dread. "So we're not fighting an invasion from outside. We're fighting a prison break. Something weakened the seal that was holding them. The question is what?" Jake Morrison had just returned from another brutal battle. He was studying the timeline of events. 6 months ago, the Council rejected Earth. 2 weeks later, the swarm appeared. "That can't be a coincidence." "You think the Council caused this?" Marcus asked in surprise. "No, not directly," Jake said, thinking hard. "But something was watching and waiting. When the Council showed division and weakness, when they isolated us and fractured their unity, it saw an opportunity. That's when it struck." Dr. Lisa Chen pulled up energy readings from the galactic core. The data looked bad. "Look at this. There's a quantum signature coming from the core that matches the ancient seal. It's failing, and it's failing faster every single day. The cracks are getting bigger." "How long do we have?" Marcus asked quietly. "Weeks at most, maybe less." Lisa's voice was grim. "When that seal breaks completely, the full swarm will emerge. Everything we've fought so far has been just scouts and advanced forces that squeezed through the cracks in the prison. The real swarm, the full force of billions of creatures, is still trapped at the core." The weight of this information settled on everyone in the room, like a physical pressure. They weren't fighting to win anymore. They were fighting to buy time for the galaxy to be evacuated before the real nightmare began. Commander Jake Morrison broke the heavy silence. "Then we take the fight to them. We go to the galactic core and we fix that seal before it breaks." "With what power source?" Marcus demanded. "The Viridian used their entire civilization." "We can't sacrifice billions of people." "No," Jake agreed. "But we have something the Viridian didn't have. We have allies now, real allies who will fight with us." The plan started to take shape over the next days. A combined fleet of Earth and Council ships would travel to the galactic core. They would fight through the densest concentrations of swarm forces ever seen. At the core, they would deploy a modified version of the quantum cage, not to create a new seal, but to repair and strengthen the existing one. It would require every council species to contribute their most advanced technology. It would require Earth to share the quantum scrambler technology they had kept secret. And it would require the fleet to hold their position at the core long enough for the repairs to finish. The scientists calculated they would need at least 6 hours. Nobody expected the fleet to survive that long. The Galactic Council met one final time before the mission. Every species sent representatives. The chamber that had once rejected humanity now looked to them for leadership. Magistrate Velor stood to address everyone. His voice was broadcast to every world in council space. 6 months ago, we stood here and rejected humanity. We called them violent and aggressive. We said they were unworthy of joining us. We were afraid of what they represented, of the warrior spirit we had forgotten in our long peace. He looked directly at where Claire Sullivan stood with Commander Morrison and Captain Brooks. Today, humanity has saved 17 of our worlds. They have taught us how to fight and how to defend ourselves. They showed us how to never surrender even when things look hopeless. And now they propose to lead us into the very heart of darkness to save us all. His voice grew stronger. We cannot undo our past mistakes. We cannot take back the words we said or the harm we caused. But we can choose our future. The Council votes now. Not on whether to accept humanity into our ranks, but on whether to follow them into battle. The vote was taken. All 47 lights glowed blue. It was unanimous. The combined fleet began assembling at the edge of council space. Over 700 ships from 20 different species came together. It was the largest armada the galaxy had ever seen. At its center were Earth's vessels, scarred and battle-hardened from 100 fights. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the faces of his squadron leaders on communication screens. Lieutenant Danny Hayes, Lieutenant Sophie Grant now commanding her own ship, Captain Alan Brooks leading a battle group. All of them knew what was coming. This is it, Jake said simply. Everything we've fought for comes down to this mission. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for everyone. For all the people in the galaxy who just want to live their lives in peace and raise their children without fear. He paused, looking at each face. Some of us won't make it back. Maybe none of us will, but we're going anyway because that's what heroes do. They stand between the darkness and the light no matter the cost. The fleet began its final jump toward the galactic core, toward a battle that would decide the fate of all intelligent life in the galaxy. The journey to the galactic core took 3 days of constant fighting. The fleet had to battle through increasingly thick swarms of enemy ships. Every hour brought new losses. Ships fell in flames. Entire squadrons disappeared from the formation. But the fleet pushed forward, driven by desperate determination. The closer they got to the core, the more swarm ships they encountered. It was like pushing through an ocean that got thicker and heavier with each kilometer. Captains made impossible decisions about who to save and who to leave behind. Crews worked past exhaustion, running on nothing but willpower and stimulants. The Xanthari ships threw themselves into the most dangerous positions to protect weaker vessels. The Draxan warriors rediscovered the fighting spirit of their ancestors, holding impossible defensive lines. The Vryn used their massive cargo ships as mobile fortresses, their thick hulls absorbing damage meant for others. And humans did what they always did. They adapted to each new challenge, found creative solutions, and absolutely refused to give up even when logic said they should. When the fleet finally reached the galactic core, what they saw took their breath away. The supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center was surrounded by billions of swarm ships. It looked like a living sphere of biological horror that stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction. The sight was beyond nightmare. At the heart of this impossible mass of enemy ships, the quantum seal flickered and pulsed like a dying star. They could see it failing in real time, cracks spreading through its structure. "Deploy the repair device," General Marcus Webb ordered from Earth. His voice was transmitted across the vast distance through relay stations. "All ships, hold your positions. By the engineers' time to work." What followed was not really a battle in any traditional sense. It was a sacrifice measured in blood and burning metal. The surviving ships formed a protective sphere around the engineering teams. Xanthari, Thalix, and human engineers worked together on the quantum repair matrix. They worked while the world exploded around them, while ships died to keep them alive, while the swarm pressed in from all sides. When ships ran out of ammunition, they used their hulls as shields, placing themselves between the swarm and the repair device. When power systems failed, crews manually redirected life support to weapons, choosing to suffocate so they could keep fighting. When engines died and ships could no longer maneuver, crews used emergency thrusters to steer, pointing their ships at enemy targets for one final ram. Commander Jake Morrison's fighter squadron, reduced to just 30 ships from the original 300, held the inner defensive perimeter. His voice was hoarse from shouting orders. Keep them away from the engineers. Every second matters. Every second counts. A massive swarm ship broke through the outer defensive line. It was heading straight for the repair device, and nothing stood in its path except a single damaged fighter. Lieutenant Sophie Grant's ship was already crippled, her engines barely working, her weapons almost empty. "Tell my mom and dad I love them," she transmitted calmly. Then she accelerated her dying fighter directly into the swarm creature's path at maximum speed. The collision and resulting explosion created a fireball that consumed dozens more swarm ships. Sophie had bought them 10 more seconds. 10 precious seconds for the repair to continue. Captain Alan Brooks commanded the Harbinger from a bridge that was half destroyed. Most of his crew was dead or dying around him. The ship's armor had been melted away by bioplasma fire. Systems were failing throughout the vessel, but the weapon still worked. "For Earth," he transmitted as his ship's reactor began to go critical. "For everyone who comes after us." The Harbinger exploded in a blast so powerful it created a temporary gap in the swarm's formation. In that gap, 3 smaller ships managed to reach the repair device with critical components. Dr. Lisa Chen was inside the quantum repair matrix, working alongside alien engineers she couldn't have imagined cooperating with 6 months ago. Her hands moved with practiced precision, connecting systems and calibrating fields while the universe burned outside. "It's working," she shouted over the communication channel to General Marcus on Earth. "The seal is stabilizing. We just need more time." But time was the one thing they didn't have. The swarm pressed harder, sensing that something important was happening. More ships fell. The defensive sphere was collapsing inward. Commander Jake Morrison's fighter had taken so much damage it barely responded to controls. Half his weapons were offline. His life support was failing. But he kept flying, kept fighting, because that's what humans do. "All remaining ships tighten the formation," he ordered. His voice was calm despite everything. "We hold here. We don't retreat." Not 1 meter. 18 ships answered his call. 18 ships out of the 700 that had started this journey. They formed a final defensive wall around the repair device, knowing they would not survive but determined to make their deaths count for something. The swarm came at them like a tsunami of living flesh and biometal. The 18 ships fired everything they had. When their ammunition was gone, they rammed. When their ships were too damaged to move, they detonated reactors. Inside the repair matrix, the final connection was made. Dr. Lisa Chen pressed the activation button with shaking hands. The quantum seal blazed to life with blinding intensity. It was reinforced by technology from every council species and breakthrough innovations from human scientists. The seal expanded outward in a wave of quantum energy, pushing the swarm ships back toward the black hole. The massive gravitational pull of the black hole, combined with the renewed quantum cage, began dragging swarm ships inward. They tried to resist, tried to escape, but the mathematics of physics were absolute. One by one, then by the hundreds, then by the thousands, swarm ships were pulled into the event horizon and crushed out of existence. "All remaining ships, retreat now," Jake Morrison ordered. He watched the seal complete its repair through his cracked canopy. Mission accomplished. Let's go home. But there were only 7 ships left that could still move under their own power. 7 ships out of 700. The journey back to Council space took a week. A week of silence and grief as the survivors processed what they had seen and done. 3 weeks after the Battle of the Core, Ambassador Claire Sullivan stood before the Galactic Council once more. This time she wore the uniform of an Earth Admiral. The Council had granted her this rank for her service in coordinating the final mission. The Council chamber was different now. Representatives stood rather than sat in judgment. They stood as equals rather than superiors. Magistrate Velor spoke, but every council member had agreed on his words. "Humanity of Earth, 6 months ago we rejected you. We called you violent when we should have called you strong. We called you aggressive when we should have called you protective. We feared your warrior nature when we should have celebrated it." He stepped down from his platform and walked to stand directly in front of Claire. It was a gesture of equality no Zenthari magistrate had ever made before. Today the Galactic Council does not vote on whether to accept humanity as members. That would still place us above you. Instead, we ask humbly if humanity will accept us. Will you join us not as followers but as leaders? Will you help us remember what we forgot? Will you teach us to stand strong when darkness comes? Claire looked around the chamber. She saw species who had condemned Earth, who had sanctioned them, who had left them to die. She also saw species who had fought beside humans, bled beside them, and died beside them. The Council voted against Earth, and you thought you sealed our fate. Claire said quietly, "Instead, you freed us to become what we needed to be. Not your servants or your soldiers, but your partners, your equals, your friends," she smiled with genuine warmth. "Earth accepts gladly, not as subordinates but as colleagues. We'll stand with you, fight with you, build a better future with you. But we do it together, as partners who respect each other." The council chamber erupted in celebration. It was the first time in thousands of years that the galaxy truly felt united, as one people with one purpose. On Earth, General Marcus Webb sat alone in his office, reading the final casualty reports. So many names, so many brave souls who would never see the peace they had won. He wiped tears from his eyes and began the painful work of writing letters to families. Commander Jake Morrison, one of the few survivors from the core battle, stood at a memorial wall. New names were being etched into it every hour as the final counts came in. He touched the names of friends, squadron mates, and fellow warriors with gentle fingers. "We did it," he whispered to the wall, to the memories, to the dead who could not hear. "You tried to make us small, but you made us strong instead." The Galactic Council had voted against Earth to protect themselves from humanity's violent nature. In doing so, they had left themselves vulnerable to an ancient enemy they had forgotten how to fight. They had sealed their own destruction through pride and fear. But humanity had made a different choice. They had chosen to help anyway, to fight for people who had rejected them, to sacrifice themselves for others. That choice had saved the galaxy. The Korthak swarm remained sealed at the galactic core, contained but never truly destroyed. The seal would need constant monitoring and maintenance. It would require eternal vigilance from guardians who,